Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. I am so excited about this hashtag hold the line because this woman came up when we were having a discussion in our Rappler Plus group about truth telling. And she put something in our chat that stayed with all of us. And, you're going to meet her and you're going to see what she did. Joy Watford, thank you so much for coming today to hashtag hold the line.
Hello, thank you, Maria. Hi, everyone.
So, you sent us this link and it affected all of us that night. Why don't you show us what this was?
Sure, I'll share my screen with you guys. This is the website that I created in 2019. And here, these are portraits of some of the victims, very few, a very small number of the victims of what President Duterte initially called his war on drugs. And I decided to paint their portraits and tell their stories alongside the portraits. So if I click on one of them,
This is one of the ones that actually made me not sleep that night, right? I knew the story. And guys,
mm,
what's fascinating about this is not only did she paint the portrait, but her writing is incredible. And it also footnotes where she got the stuff, where she got the information, the facts, right? This particular one, Aldrin, tell us about Aldrin.
Aldrin was a 13-year-old boy who lived in Tondo, and he was in this neighborhood called Vitas, where the most prominent feature was this slaughterhouse, which was infamous for being so badly maintained. And I think now it's been cleaned up now, and it looks a lot better now. But Aldrin and his friends used to play along the fence that surrounded that slaughterhouse. And what happened was when they were playing one time, a policeman just decided to shoot him for no reason at all. And so, Aldrin was shot in the stomach, and I think he lived for a couple of days where the doctors tried to save him but failed. And yeah, so one of the most I don't know, one of the most horrifying things about this is that, there was there was a lot of there was an attempt by the cop himself to cover up what he did. He actually tried to blame the kids for what he did. He said that they were throwing stones at him, and then he tripped and accidentally fired his gun. There was just no remorse. And another thing that really touched me was how his mother tried to fend off any rumors about Aldrin being a drug user. She felt she had to say that just to make people understand that her son did not deserve to die. But this was a 13-year-old boy. He was just playing, and to be killed like that, it was one of the things that didn't make sense. I know that every one of these killings, we've got around 30,000 so far. None of this made sense. And I wanted to point that out. And I wanted to point out how these killings affect, these killings just did not, the stories just did not end in the deaths of these people because they have families, they have communities who are affected and who carry that burden of their deaths, and who will carry that burden for as long as they live. And I just wanted to point those things out and make people see that.
So I'm gonna, I will ask you a lot more about what you were after, but in this particular one, when you are painting, so this takes
Mm,
hours and hours, right? Like painting this and then writing, researching, and then
mm.
writing it. What goes through your mind? Why do you do that?
I think I don't know, I've been monitoring what was happening in the Philippines pretty much just before the drug war started, because I had had my misgivings about Duterte from the beginning, even when he was just campaigning, because of the violence and misogyny that he employed in his language, in his campaign speeches. So I was worried about that. And then when he declared his so called war on drugs during, I think it was his State of the Nation address, uh, I was really worried, and I was sort of monitoring. And of course, like just days after he declared that, I could see reports, news reports saying that certain people had been killed because of buy bust operations. And there was that phrase that was being used, that nanlaban, as in the victims had tried to fight back. And early on, I knew that was not really what was going on. And one of the other things that happened was I knew somebody from college, a friend from college, her brother was killed in one such operation. And so I knew this, these are lies. These are not real, real drug dealers who were being killed. And so I was sort of monitoring that number really closely from the very beginning. And remember that the Inquirer had like what they call, I think it was called the kill list or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were listing all the names of the people who had been killed. And it was shocking to me to see how quickly that number was growing. I did not expect it to escalate so quickly. And that was a shock to me.
During that time period, I mean, we
Mm,
were, when you look back at the numbers, you were
mm,
averaging 33 deaths a night at the beginning.
yeah,
And
yeah,
our reporter alone was bringing home, we only had one person on the night shift, and she would bring home 8 dead bodies a night, right? It was insane, and it happened in plain sight. So Joy, because I think I asked you about whether or not, how the hours that you took. So while you were painting this, do you get emotional? Do you
I
cry?
do. Yes, yes, I do. Absolutely, absolutely. Almost every one of them made me cry, especially when I'm doing the painting. Because, when you're painting, you're sort of studying the features of the person. And it's like, I'll be admiring a person's features, and then I would just no, wow, this person's not here anymore. Especially when painting kids, knowing that that's how they're always going to be. A 4-year old, a 5-year old, that yeah, I've spent so many emotional yeah, emotional times, just processing what I was doing and how it was affecting me. And but I've always considered, like, this is a sacrifice that I'm making. And it's not even a tiny fraction of what their families are going through. And if this sacrifice helps in the tiniest bit, then yeah, that's it. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to make that sacrifice.
Joy, you have lived in the UK for 19 years, though.
Mm.
Like, I guess, why did you care so much?
um why did I care so much? I think I'll I you know no, I never really thought I had never really considered, how much love I had for the Philippines in all the years, before 2016, in all the years that I lived here in the UK, because I've been here since 2002. But when these things started happening, that was when I started feeling like I felt more attached to the country, because I was so worried about the people who were being affected by the killings. I was so worried about how this was spreading so quickly. And I just didn't want that to happen. And what really shocked me was this wall of indifference and silence that the news reports from home seemed to be meeting, not just here in my community in the UK, but it seemed like, in the whole, like the Filipino diaspora around the world. There just there just didn't seem to be any reaction. And um and also from among the Filipinos back home, I remember posting early on, when the killing started, and I was saying, this is not a war on drugs, this is a war on the poor. And why aren't people saying anything? And I would get responses from friends who would agree with me, but there were also some friends who would say, you don't know what's really going on here. You haven't been here for a long time. It's so bad here, and what he's doing is right. He's getting rid of the criminals. And one other friend said that, yeah, I feel a lot safer now walking the streets at night. And to me, that was just so ridiculous. I said, it's not right. This isn't right. Whatever reason the government, the president would give for these killings doesn't make these killings right at all, you know. And to me that was like, and also the atmosphere at that time, you know, it was 2016, just after the elections in the Philippines. We had the Brexit referendum here in the UK, and that to me was like really screwed up as well. And you know, and then the atmosphere of, you know, the presidential elections in the US. And I honestly, I just started feeling some sort of existential angst because I was like, the world's going up in flames, and some people just didn't seem to care. But I didn't want to be one of those people. I didn't want to just be indifferent to what was going on.
And that is why you did this. Again, we go back. Like, let me ask you the most haunting photo, the story. I mean, this is hours of labor.
Mm.
Which one to you was the most haunting?
I mean, all of these, like you said, all of these stories, all of these portraits take ages to complete. I think the most a lot of the work goes into the research, because I try, you know, I read a lot of news articles, I watch videos, sometimes I troll through social media as well to find out what people, you know, what their friends thought of the victims, what their families thought of the victims. To me, there's so many haunting stories here, but I'll tell you one of the most haunting ones, simply because of what happened afterwards, and that's Joshua Laksamana. So Joshua was a 17-year-old boy from Tarlac. He was a Dota 2 player. I didn't know what Dota 2 was, but apparently it's like a very popular online game, and they hold tournaments for that game. So he was really good at the game. So he was like he was traveling, playing in tournaments, and so he and a couple of friends went up to Baguio to play in a tournament. And they did that because they didn't have any money. They were just hitching rides on trucks, you know, going from Tarlac to Baguio. And then on the way back from Baguio, they did that as well. They hitched a ride on a truck, but then the truck driver had a change of plans. And so he decided to let the boys off once they reached, I think, Pangasinan. And the three boys were sort of separated from each other. One of them decided to stay back for a bit. And then Joshua and the other boy, Julius, wanted to go home as quickly as they could. So they went, and they were never seen again alive. Joshua turned up days later as a body in a morgue. There was a video apparently of the police chasing him because he was supposedly riding a motorbike, and he went through a barricade, and they chased him, and they had a shootout, and they shot him dead. And they said he was a member of a gang because he had a tattoo on his hand. But that tattoo was of one of the characters from Dota. And Joshua didn't know how to ride a motorbike. He didn't own a motorbike. So I was really touched by the story. And his friend Julius, the other boy, was never found. He still hasn't been found. I was really touched by the story, and I was doing research on Joshua. And then I found out that his brother was sort of active in social media. He was posting on lots of public forums about Joshua. He was saying, he wanted justice for his brother. So this was one of the rare moments where I actually decided to reach out to a relative of a victim. So I reached out to him, and I just sort of asked him about, Joshua. What can you say about Joshua? And I said to him, I'm painting his portrait, and I want to be able to tell his story. And at first he was really open, and then he became really cautious. He said, well, I spoke to my mother, and she said, just to be careful. So I said, I just backed off. I said, it's fine. You don't have to talk to me. It's fine. I'll just leave you alone. And then so I posted the story after I was done. And then a week later, because I would post the stories initially on Facebook and Instagram, a week later I noticed that the story was being shared by a lot of people that I didn't know. And it was like the most number of shares that I had on a story. And I traced it back to Joshua's brother. So he started sharing the story, and then his friends and Joshua's friends were sharing this. All these young kids were sharing the story. And then a couple of weeks later, I actually got a voice call from Joshua's mother herself. And initially I thought, oh my God, she's angry with me. She's gonna say, no, take that photo down. I don't want you to talk about my son. But actually, she was in tears and she was crying, and she said she was really grateful that somebody, a complete stranger, had taken the time to paint her son's portrait and tell his story. She said she felt so down, but then knowing that there was somebody who actually cared, who wasn't even in the Philippines, who cared, just sort of, gave her some sort of strength. And we've become friends since. Her name is Christine. And so, because at that point I had only been posting the portraits for a few months, but at that point I was thinking, what is this? What am I doing? Who is this serving? How useful is this doing any good at all? I mean, am I just doing this because of my somehow my ego? Am I chasing clout because of this? That's what I was doubting myself. And who is this serving? I mean, if people are just ignoring this, what's the point? But then hearing from Christine made me realize, yeah, I'm doing this for people like Christine. I'm doing this for people like Joshua, so that their stories will never be forgotten. And I don't want to forget, and I want other people to not forget as well.
And that is exactly why your labor of love, right, captured us in our Rappler Plus group, because it reminded us. I mean, it reminded us of our humanity. It reminded us of each one of these individual stories. Several of us couldn't sleep that night after you shared it with us, right?
I'm
It's
so sorry about that.
no, no, no. It should be that way, right? You reminded us of our humanity. That's incredible. How long did it take you to paint Joshua's portrait?
I I actually struggled with this portrait because all I could find was like this really blurry photo. I mean, for most of these portraits, all I could find were blurry photos. And I guess I think I made like 3 or 4 attempts before I felt I had captured his image correctly. So it took maybe weeks, because I have, I have a full time job. So I only do this like over the weekend or, in the evening. So yeah, it was a few weeks before I actually finished the portrait, and I was happy with it. And Christine seemed happy with it. She said, I said to her I would give her the original painting when we meet in person. So yeah.
So the show, this is hashtag hold the line, right? I guess, what line were you holding when you were going through this? This is weeks of painting a man, a child, a kid, painting people you don't know, but living with their stories. What is that line for you?
Um, I guess I can explain it better when if I talk about the time I went home to the Philippines in 2019. Uh, at that time, I only stayed for 2 weeks. And I just stayed just to see my family. But also, I met up with people like Father Danny Pilario, who works with the victims' families in Payatas. So I got to meet the families in Payatas, and spent some time with them, listen to their stories, and then I also went around Manila, talking. I took every chance I could to just talk to people. Like I would talk to jeepney drivers, I would talk to Grab drivers. And for me, being in Manila at that time sort of showed me how worn out people were. There was just this exhaustion. And and I was thinking at the time, here I am, sort of feeling self-righteous and sort of being preachy, and wondering why people aren't listening, why people aren't paying attention. But I see these people, and they're so caught up in the drudgery of everyday life, when you have to sort of battle your way through life each day just to survive. And I thought, I'm not going to get angry with, there's this tendency for some people to blame the 16 million people who voted for Duterte. I'm not going to blame the 16 million people, because most of those people are just trying to survive, and they have no, they don't have the time to evaluate the news. They don't have time, they're relying on Facebook, yes. And most of them just don't have the resources to find information elsewhere. And so I just feel like the responsibility lies on people like us, people who have, who have the time, who have the sort of life that makes room for critical thinking. And for me, people like us shouldn't be indifferent. We can't afford to be indifferent. You have to be the ones to be paying attention, and we have to be the ones who are calling for change, because we have to do that for the sake of the millions of other people who just don't have the time and the resources to do so.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm gonna just ask you to take the pull us back to the front of
Mhm,
the
sure.
because your portraits are incredible. It's those we lost. We will share the link with you. Go ahead and show us. Look at each one of these guys. My last question to you is, thank you for your thoughts on this. The last question, I guess, is that you kind of explained to us why a lot of people don't care, but that is if they if they are struggling to survive. What about people like us, the people with money, people who are privileged? Why is this okay?
I really can't, I really can't explain it. But I think if I were to look at the Filipino community, at least the Filipino community that I know here in the UK, there's this. I don't think they're completely indifferent to what's happening. But the response that I always seem to get when I try to talk about these things is that, yeah, it's really, really horrible. It's bad that these things are happening, but we can't do anything about it. Let's just pray that these killings will be over, and let's just be grateful that our own families are safe. And I think that's the thing that, if you know that, if you've managed to convince yourself that you're safe and your family is safe, nothing bad is going to happen to you, it's easy to shut everything else out. Because if you don't, then you will have to care, and you will be compelled to take action, and there might be consequences to taking action that you are probably worried about. So that's how I see it, based on my communication with other Filipinos here in the UK.
That sounds about right. Thank you for your insights. I mean, sometimes you have to be a way to be able to see it, right? I mean, there are consequences, obviously. Uh,
Mm.
and we go back to the truth telling part. Last thoughts on, you know, you've captured them. Uh, what, I guess, what do you want people to do?
I would like people to like spare a thought for the victims, and the communities that they and their families belong to. It's not enough that we're safe. It's not enough that our families are safe, unless all of us are free, and all of us are safe from the violence that's perpetuated by the government. Then we're not really a free country. And it's our responsibility as people who are supposed to know better, or who have the resources to learn and to help. It's our responsibility to help the victims' families out. Whether financially, or whether just by letting them know that you care. There are many ways to reach out, and there are many organizations that uh, are there directly involved in helping these people. So let's not turn away from. And this is something that my parents had always told me, because my parents are poor people. We grew up poor, and my parents didn't even finish high school. But one thing they always taught us was never to turn away if somebody needs your help. If it doesn't matter if you don't have money, if you don't have enough resources yourself, you will always have to try and find a way to help. And I hope that we will all do that somehow. But yeah,
Joy Watford, thank you so
thank you.
much for doing this. This it's a labor of love for for sharing your thoughts, your insights, and for helping us shine the light. Thank you.
Thank you so much.